Fierce survival competition of 11 trainees. YG's new idol group is in the making. Watch the process on Win, Who Is Next. A new photo documentary on Korea, In Frame. Rediscover Korea through the lens of esteemed photographers. We start with a 10-part project taken with world-famous Magnum photographers. Korea in the eyes of photographers. Rediscover Korea in the photographic documentary, In Frame. All about the arts of Korea, Arts Avenue. Look at the trends and artistry of Korean culture and art across segments. Arts Avenue is coming back in Season 2 with a new look. The ever-expanding world of Korean arts. See it unfold on Arts Avenue.
Asia's heartbeat, Arirang.
One beautiful day, he came into my heart. Slowly, quietly, they have kept their ways of life through time. And they have given me unforgettable memories to last.
Started out on the letter, but it was all she could take. Conversations she had before, but they're about to break. Somewhere along the line, she got what she wanted.
Dynamic Busan.
Up next in the broadcast, President Park and Chinese leader Xi stand in agreement on not tolerating North Korea's nuclear program as Pyongyang offered threats of preemptive strikes in response to the latest Korea-U.S. military exercises. And we have analysis of the recent security consultative meeting between Seoul and Washington, which outlines a new tailored deterrence strategy against North Korean provocations. And dozens are killed in new street protests over in Egypt as violence erupted over the weekend as the nation celebrated its 40th anniversary of the 1973 war with Israel. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Monday, October 7th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin in Bali, where President Park Geun-hye took part in this year's APEC summit, where she held a series of one-on-one meetings on the sidelines of the global gathering, including one on North Korea-related matters with her Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping.
For more on her second day on the tropical Indonesian island, our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju, who is traveling with the president, files us this report.
President Park has asked China to persuade North Korea to make the right decision and give up its nuclear ambitions. During a bilateral summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of the official opening of the APEC summit on Monday, President Park stressed that Pyongyang should not put everything it has into nuclear development when so many North Koreans are suffering from chronic malnutrition.
북한이 핵을 포기하고 경제 발전에 주력하도록 많이 설득해 주시고 힘써 주시기를 부탁드리겠습니다.
She also expressed regret over North Korea's sudden postponement of a plan to reunite families separated by the Korean War and emphasized the importance of close cooperation between Seoul and Beijing. In the third bilateral summit between Presidents Park and Xi, the Chinese leader took a stronger stance on the North Korean nuclear issue. President Xi reportedly said that China opposes North Korea's possession of nuclear weapons outright and will take a firm stand against future nuclear tests. A high-ranking Korean government official told reporters that the Chinese president also pledged to abide by UN Security Council resolutions against Pyongyang. President Park had earlier expressed appreciation to Beijing for announcing last month that it was banning a long list of equipment and chemical substances from export to North Korea. During her bilateral summit with Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, the two sides agreed to work towards signing a Korea-Canada free trade agreement by the end of this year. She also held separate talks with Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto and Peruvian President Ollanta Humala and discussed ways to expand their economic cooperation. Later in the day, in her keynote speech at the first session of the APEC summit, President Park put an emphasis on the need to push ahead with trade liberalization within the Asia-Pacific region while staying away from trade protectionism, even during hard times, to revitalize the world economy. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, Bali.
And here's the latest on the government's crackdown on tax evasion. Korea's customs agency has unveiled illegal currency transactions worth more than $940 million that were filtered through offshore tax havens.
An embattled former President Chun Doo-hwan's family is among those implicated. Arirang's Hwang Ji-ae has details on the results of the months-long investigation.
The Korea Customs Service said Monday that it has uncovered evidence that the family of former President Chun Doo-hwan was involved in illegal foreign currency transactions. The agency says transactions that took place through tax havens like the British Virgin Islands as a means to evade taxes were conducted by manipulating prices of import and export products.
We found some suspicious transactions related to the exports and imports of Chun's companies. We have notified state prosecutors about the discovery.
An investigation into Chun's family appears to be just a matter of time despite the former president's pledge to return ill-gotten gains back to the country. The Customs Office launched a probe into the outflow of wealth through illegal currency transactions in June, in line with the government's tightened clampdown on underground economic activities. In addition to the transactions linked to Chun and his family, the customs agency uncovered 40 companies involved in illegal foreign currency transactions worth more than 1 trillion won, or roughly $940 million. The customs agency's move comes after an independent journalist group unveiled a list of individuals and companies who reportedly established paper companies in tax havens to avoid paying taxes. 5 of the 40 companies confirmed to have evaded corporate taxes worth more than $13 million have been reported to the National Tax Service, while the customs agency continues its investigations into the rest. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
And marking the start of the current parliamentary session, the ruling Saenuri Party laid out its goals on this Monday.
They included placing a greater focus on President Park's pledge to further develop the country's economy. Our Kim Hyun-ji reports from the National Assembly.
Saenuri Party leader Hwang Woo-yeol told lawmakers Monday that the government and the legislature should come together to raise the nation's per capita GDP to $30,000. Saying that the nation needs a new paradigm for economic growth, Hwang stressed that President Park's vision for a creative economy based on an individual's creativity and the convergence of industry and culture is the answer. As such, he said the parliament should approve laws that support young people seeking to launch their own businesses.
The National Assembly must set up a legislative framework enabling Korea to enter the era of the $30,000 per capita GDP and become an advanced nation where people are happy.
The ruling party leader asked the minority parties not to abuse the National Assembly Advancement Law, which was designed to keep the majority party from ramming bills through the legislature without the participation of the minority.
We must vote on bills on schedule, as the people expect. If the majority party rams a bill through on its own or the minority party opposes a bill just for the sake of opposition, public opinion will turn sour and the people will be quick to judge in elections.
The ruling party leader also offered an apology for the government's scaled-down pension plan for senior citizens, seen as a retreat from one of the president's major campaign pledges. The minority parties, including the main opposition Democratic Party, criticized the ruling party leader's speech, saying that he glossed over important issues that have rattled the nation, including the spy agency's alleged meddling in last year's presidential election and questions about how the ruling party got its hands on a transcript of the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit before the December election. The Democratic Party will lay out its goals in a speech Tuesday. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
And speaking of legislative goals, starting in the year 2016, the maximum working hours per week could be reduced to 52 hours from the current 68 hours.
The ruling Senate Party and the Labor Ministry agreed on Monday to push for a revision bill that would require that employees clock in for no more than 40 hours per week, plus an additional 12 hours of overtime, which includes work done on weekends. Employees can currently punch in for 12 hours of overtime work and another 16 hours for weekend labor, pushing the maximum number of work hours per week to 68. If the bill gets a green light from the Parliament, firms with at least 1,000 full-time employees will be required to adopt the new work hour limit in 2016, and smaller companies at a later date. And while the fiasco surrounding the troubled Dongyang Group continues to unfold, the head of the Financial Supervisory Service is under fire.
A civic group representing investors who have suffered losses from the debt-ridden conglomerate is planning to launch a campaign sometime this week to protest against the watchdog's lack of oversight. Yu Lian tells us more.
The Financial Consumer Agency has been growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of action from the country's financial watchdog in dealing with the massive losses incurred by the tens of thousands of people who invested in the cash-strapped Dongyang Group. The Financial Supervisory Service has already been under fire for failing to properly monitor the debt-ridden Dongyang Group. The country's 30th largest conglomerate had sold a massive amount of high-risk corporate bills and bonds, mostly to individual investors, to repay its debt. The Financial Consumer Agency, or FCA, says it has repeatedly asked to meet with the head of the FSS to create a relief plan for the nearly 20,000 investors who have filed for losses with the FCA. After failing to get any response, the consumer agency vowed on Monday to launch a campaign calling on the head of the financial watchdog, Choi Soo-hyun, to step down. The Financial Supervisory Service maintains that it is doing all it can to deal with the Dongyang crisis. Since last Friday, the watchdog has been analyzing more than 8,000 complaints filed by investors holding Dongyang debt. Around 40,000 investors have fallen victim to the Dongyang crisis. And with no relief plan announced, their concerns are growing.
Most of these people have invested their marriage funds, retirement savings, and severance pay. It's hard to even imagine the pain that these people are going through. One widowed investor has even lost all of her former husband's insurance money.
Dongyang Group owes retail investors 2 trillion won, or roughly $1.8 billion, and about $840,000 to financial firms as of the end of last month. Yu Lian, Arirang News.
Last week was a busy one for the nation's defense ministry, with top military officials from the United States, Korea's biggest ally, visiting Seoul for a series of significant defense talks.
For more on the tangible outcomes that have emerged from the meeting and the outstanding issues that remain, we're joined by our defense ministry correspondent, Han Da-eun, in the studio. Hello, Don.
Good evening, Sean, Ji-hye. The annual Korea-U.S. Defense Dialogue ended last week, but major military issues between the two allies are still the talk of the town here in Korea. The biggest outcome, of course, of the talks, dubbed Security Consultative Meeting, or SCM, was the official endorsement of a tailored deterrent strategy against North Korean nuclear and missile threats. Since the strategy contains confidential military information, we're not privy to every single detail of the agreement, but I'll break it down for you as clearly as possible. The tailored deterrent strategy is a specified tool that counters North Korea's asymmetric nuclear threat, and it's different from the previous abstract umbrella strategy provided by the U.S. Let's bring in a chart. The plan calls for military action based on 3 levels. The first is the level of a general threat. Since an actual threat has not been detected in this scenario, political and diplomatic efforts are primarily made to resolve Pyongyang's nuclear issue. Most of the time, the Korean military would operate within this level. The second is the level of imminent threat. At this stage, the military has detected imminent missile or nuclear activities from the north and deploys the nation's kill chain system to get rid of the threats. Most conventional weapons, including stealth fighter jets, stealth bombers, and aircraft carriers, will also be involved at this stage to support the kill chain system. The third is the level of an actual threat. At this stage, the Korea Air and Missile Defense, or KAMD system, will be activated to destroy missiles or nuclear weapons that may be in the air. And nuclear weapons provided by the U.S. will be used at this final stage. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering what a kill chain or KAMD system is, so I talked to a weapons expert for further explanation.
A kill chain system is an aggressive defense system that deters the enemy's potential threats in advance. It's a quick chain of military actions, from threat assessment conducted by collecting all possible information to an actual strike against missiles, all done in just 30 minutes' time. The KAMD system is activated when the kill chain fails to destroy missiles. It was built exclusively to intercept and destroy short-range but fast-speed missiles in the lower level of the air, so it won't fall on South Korean soil.
And weapons experts add that the kill chain and KAMD system are basically the best South Korea can do, given the fact that we're not in a position to possess a nuclear weapon.
Well, Dan, another issue that is under heavy scrutiny is the transfer delay of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. Now, did the two sides make any progress in this matter?
No, not much. As you know, there wasn't a clear conclusion as to when the OPCON would be transferred, but government officials and experts say Seoul and Washington have somewhat agreed on the need to further delay the timeline amid ever more increasing North Korean nuclear threats. What was stressed all throughout the security talks was that the transition would be conditions-based. Let's listen in to a defense expert on what this means.
The first condition would be evaluation of the current security situation, including assessment of North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. The second would be certifying the countering capabilities of the South Korean military. The certifying process would include assessing how well prepared the military is to command the wartime operational control.
And Tom, what about the issue of cost sharing for the military? Did they make any progress on that?
Not much on that either. Seoul and Washington continued their tug of war on how much each should contribute in keeping U.S. troops in Korea. The Korean government has put aside roughly $740 million for its share of the burden for next year, while the U.S. is requesting at least $930 million. And situations aren't getting better amid Washington's tight budget cuts, but some experts remain optimistic.
Such differences have existed in the past. It's not the first time. I think the two sides will be able to work it out as long as they find ways to better systemize the cost division and monitor each spending. Also, there are a great amount of accumulated money that have not yet been spent.
And before I go, just as a reminder, there will be a Korea-U.S.-Japan joint naval exercise beginning from tomorrow. That's Tuesday. During the 3-day drill, U.S. aircraft carrier USS George Washington will be participating. Since the drill comes right after the Seoul-Washington defense talks and after a North Korea deterrent strategy was completed, it's expected to stoke already annoyed nerves of Pyongyang. We're hearing strong criticisms already from the North, but it looks like we'll hear a lot more this week.
Right, Dan, thank you very much for the reminder and also the breakdown of the Korea-U.S. defense dialogue.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise. Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature, circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report.
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meaning came on the news are trying to cover up the South.
A document proving Japan had forcefully brought women into wartime sexual slavery has been made public.
Japan's Kyodo News says this old court document shows the Japanese military during World War II coerced 35 Dutch women into sexual slavery in Indonesia. The more than 500-page document was made available from last month this past Sunday by the National Archives of Japan upon a request by a Japanese civic organization. What the document contains goes against the current Shinzo Abe administration's stance on the sex slave issue. The Abe cabinet insists there is no official evidence to prove the victims were forced to provide sexual services. And over now to Egypt in turmoil. Security forces and Islamist protesters clashed on Sunday, leaving at least 51 people dead.
Our Son Jung-in has more on the wave of deadly attacks in Egypt.
People from Egypt's two rival camps, supporters of the ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi and backers of the military that deposed him, took to the streets and turned on each other in one of the deadliest clashes since the army seized power in July. The violence started early Sunday afternoon as Muslim Brotherhood protesters marched in different neighborhoods in Cairo and across the city. According to the Health Ministry, at least 51 people were killed nationwide, with at least 45 deaths in the capital city alone, while another 270 people were injured. The ministry said that majority of the deaths were caused by bullets and birdshot. Meanwhile, neither demonstrators nor security forces appeared willing to compromise, with protesters from the Muslim Brotherhood saying they would accept nothing less than the reinstatement of the government led by Morsi, while supporters of the military remained adamantly against that. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And the first of this year's Nobel Prizes has been announced.
3 scientists were named as the winners of this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine on Monday for their work in discovering how cells transport material. James Rothman, Randy Schekman, and Thomas Sweetoff will share the prize. The Nobel Committee said the mechanism the 3 men discovered can contribute to treating diabetes and brain disorders. The winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics will be announced on Tuesday.
The Korean hurler Yoo Hyun-jin took the mound for the Los Angeles Dodgers in his first postseason game on Sunday local time.
It was a crucial game for his club, and Stephen Shea joins us now from the Sports Center to tell us more about how he fared. Stephen.
Hey guys, the hefty lefty in Dodger Blue started in Game 3 of the National League Division Series versus the Atlanta Braves at Dodger Stadium. Ryu struggled early, giving up 2 runs in the first and got himself in another jam in the third by loading the bases before giving up 2 more runs on fielder's choices. He was pulled in the fourth for Chris Capuano. Luckily, the Bats saved the day as both Carl Crawford and Juan Uribe homered, helping the Dodgers to a 13-6 win. LA can close out the series in the next game on Monday at Dodger Stadium. And moving on, the Tucson Bears and the Nexen Heroes are getting ready to kick off the KBO playoffs on Tuesday. But it was media day for the first round playoff series on Monday, and both teams' managers and star players talked about their winning approach. Their heroes are looking to reduce their mistakes, while Tucson is going to lean on their experiences to push them over the hump. And getting that first win is very important. The Bears will put on Dustin Nippert on the mound in Game 1, and the Heroes will send out Brandon Knight, both 12-game winners. Game 1, with Nexen hosting Tusan at Mokdong Stadium, is scheduled for Tuesday evening. Ending off with football, Sunderland midfielder Ki Sung-young has vowed to personally apologize to former national team coach Choi Kang-hee for disparaging comments he made about him online. He arrived at Incheon International Airport Monday, where he said that he would like to make a face-to-face apology whenever Choi, currently the coach of the K-League's Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors, is up for it. Meanwhile, Ki's here to train with the South Korean squad ahead of their friendlies against Brazil on Saturday and Mali on the 15th. That does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Choi. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
Let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center for the latest forecast.
Hello, Bo-kyung. It's been a while since we've said this, but we are on typhoon watch here in the country.
Yes, Ji-hye, the typhoon Tanas is shaping up to be Korea's first October typhoon in 15 years. It's accompanied by strong winds blowing at a rate of 48 meters per second. And that means for coastal regions near the typhoon's path, windows may break due to strong winds. Let's take a look at the map for details on where the typhoon is headed. At 3 p.m. today, Tanas passed out into the sea off Okinawa, Japan. And it looks like the storm will pass about 150 kilometers south of Jeju Island by 3 p.m. tomorrow before moving past Dokdo and back to Japan. Now, tomorrow, Korea's east coast and southern regions, including Jeju Island, will be directly influenced by Tanas. In those regions, heavy rain is expected to pour down at a rate of 30 millimeters per hour, so please gear up in case of floods or landslides. Other than that, the rest of the nation should be indirectly affected by the typhoon with rain forecast all day. Now, moving on to tomorrow's numbers, Seoul and Daegu should make it to 22 degrees. Meanwhile, Gwangju and Busan hit 24. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon and Dokdo get up to 22 degrees and Kumgang peaks at 11. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but join me for another update after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Monday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.
The mini shops being open 24 hours.
The 24-hour service, the places you can get. I like beer, so go and get a beer with my friend in the 24-hour convenience store.